Good morning. This is Charity. And let me go ahead and share my screen. That would be very, very helpful. Okay, so for this morning's presentation, I have a teacher screen over here. And then for these purposes, I've gone ahead and I've opened up an incognito window over here so I can be a student. So the way you do that is you go to the three vertical dots up here, and then you open up an incognito window, and then you've got a place to be a student. I could also have a different browser, but this just works well for me to have a side-by-side teacher and student. So let's pretend I don't have all of these because this is my Google connected teacher account, but let's pretend for a second that I don't have all of these. Let's go ahead and explore some labs. I highly recommend starting off with one of the tutorials. The basic tutorials are qualitative, so they have no numbers, and the advanced tutorials are quantitative, so the students are going to see some numbers. And the way that these are set up is that the first tutorials have no recs, so they have no assistant helping them throughout the lab. They just go and try to remind them to go ahead and read the directions and make sure that their hypothesis is in line with the goal. But it's just a true assessment. So they can play around and they're going to get the scores that they're going to get. And then the second tutorial is set up with recs in the hypothesis phase only. So recs make sure that they have a testable hypothesis. And then from there, they can just play. And then the advanced tutorial has recs throughout. Each of these tutorials should take about 15 to 20 minutes, and then you'll be able to see their assessment data. So for these purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and assign the advanced tutorial 2. And what I can do here is I can actually assign some due dates. So I'm going to go ahead and assign this as being due on the 12th, just so you can see the difference, and I'm going to publish it. But this one I'm going to leave as a draft. And I'm going to go through and assign this. I just wanted you to be able to see the difference. Obviously, you can assign these without using Google Classroom. We have many teachers who do that. The majority, though, do use Google Classroom. And so I wanted to show that. So first period, this has actually been pushed out to the class. If I wanted to update, it would actually have me change the due date. So that is published in Google Classroom. This third period one is a draft. So if I want to, I can come back later and set the due date here, or I could do the same thing and I could go into Google Classroom and I could actually publish it there. So either way, two different ways to do that. And I can tell that it worked by those green check marks with Google Classroom. So just to be clear, what this does is send the assignment to Google Classroom. We are not pulling in your roster from Google Classroom. We are merely sending the activity there. So once students click on an activity, they will be able to see the activity in their student interface. So let me go ahead and grab this. If you use another system other than Google Classroom, this is how you share that. You grab the shareable link, copy your link, and then go to wherever it is you want to do that. So you grab that shareable link, and then come over. I'm going to pretend I'm a student. If you click on that while you're logged in as a teacher, then you're going to get an error because our system is registering that you are a teacher in our system, and so you'll get an error if you try using a student code. But I have an incognito window open so that I can do that. Now, the purposes of today, besides showing you really quickly how to get started, I also wanted to show you how to use Inq-Blotter. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up Inq-Blotter. My suggestion is this is very, very helpful if you're doing Inq-ITS with your students in a synchronous manner, but it's also helpful if you're doing Inq-ITS in an asynchronous manner. So let's just pretend for a second that I just sat down at my computer. I'm going to open up Blotter and I'm going to go back to doing other things that I need to do. And if you ever need to unassign something, that's how you do it. Just click and unassign it. But of course, I'd have to go to Google Classroom and do that in Google Classroom as well. Now, let's say I'm just off doing my whatever it is that I want to do, need to do, and maybe I'm doing some grading or whatever. And my students can be over here going through this. Now, I recommend using Screencastify or something else and just walking students through this. so that they can see, you're slowly going through and you're like, hey, this is your goal. Maybe in your classroom, you didn't use the word goal. So you could talk through that. This is your IV or independent variable. This is your DV or dependent variable. When you move on to collecting data, your data is here. You want to collect multiple trials. More than one trial is important. Make sure that students know once they get here, they can't go back. So they need to read that goal and make sure that they write a solid hypothesis. It is being scored. Let them know this is being scored, and they will be able to see their scores as soon as they're done. When they get to the analyze section, you would want to tell them, hey, you're going to make a claim. You need to reference back to your hypothesis, and you need to select the evidence that supports that claim. And then finally, you're going to write about that in a claim evidence reasoning format. And in the help and resources tab, or the reports tab, actually, either place, you can get a copy of the rubric, which is very, very helpful for students so that they know what to write there. Okay, and then moving on, some teachers like to talk their students through this introduction because sometimes, students just, yep, I'm done. So this, if you walk them through this, that could be helpful. What is it we're doing today? And then I'm gonna hop in here into the actual lab. So again, this should take students about 15 to 20 minutes. So I've got Rex turn, this is the second advanced tutorials. So I've got Rex, the tutor, on in hypothesizing. So I wanted to show you what students will frequently do this. Okay, roughness of the ramp, then the roughness of the ramp will increase, right? They'll create a tautology. So I'm ready to run my experiment. And Rex says, hey, I don't think your hypothesis can be tested because you do not have a dependent variable. Okay, fine. So then what if I change this to the time to the end of the ramp? Time to the end of the ramp will increase. Okay, wait. I do not think your hypothesis can be tested because you do not have an independent variable. Oh man, this guy, he just will not let me pass. Try to create a tautology and he won't let me. You know what? I'm just gonna say, if I increase the height of the tower, then the time to the end of the ramp will increase. Now notice I'm not in line with my goal, and so Rex is gonna have a problem with that, but let's just go here. Good job, Rex says. Your hypothesis has an independent variable and a dependent variable, but look back at the goal to see what specific variables you should be testing. Now, let's say I'm a student and I am super frustrated right now. So what I could do, maybe the student would reach out to you and say, this dinosaur will not let me pass. If you're the teacher, you can open up your blotter. Let's say you were working on whatever. You open up your blotter and it's going to tell you that so far today, Julian is in hypothesizing. So that's where he is, right away, that his goal is roughness of the ramp versus time to the end of the ramp. You know that he's had problems with his dependent variable not being testable, his independent variable not being testable, and he's been off goal. And so with his independent variable, and that's the one he's struggling with right now. So you can see all the different ways that Julian has struggled. You can see that he's got a 50% right now. And that you have all of this information to be able to help Julian. So it's possible to say to Julian, Julian, could you read me your goal? What does your goal say? Okay, how should we use our goal to write our hypothesis? What is the prediction that you want to make here? And so having that information, having that direction can really help to help Julian be able to say it. So, okay, if I increase, what is it you're going to change? When you get into your lab, what is it you're going to change? And hopefully he's going to say, I'm going to change the roughness of my ramp. Okay, so after you do that, what are you going to be measuring? When you get into your lab, what is it you're going to measure? And hopefully he says, well, I'm going to measure the time to the end of the ramp. And I think that they're going to, let's just say he says it's going to stay the same. And then I'm ready to run my experiment. And then notice that there's no Rex on now. So there's nothing in here to stop students. So they're just going to go, 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 go. So chances are that when Rex is off, you're probably not going to hear from students saying that they're stuck, unless they happen to be this type of student who notices that they don't understand something, because there's no dinosaur popping up to say, hey, I'm confused. So most likely you will not see have students calling you, but you would still be getting alerts even if Rex is not turned on. So if I come here and I say, the roughness of my ramp and the time to the end of the ramp will stay the same, and this supports my hypothesis, right? Kids always want, and see, you even get these alerts. If the alert was resolved, you get that. So students never want to be wrong, right? Our system can actually give them 100%, even if they're wrong in this field right here. But students will try to move forward with only selecting one trial. That's something they do quite frequently. But they will get here and they never want to say it does not support my hypothesis. And so instead, they'll just copy that and say, yep, supports my hypothesis, and they want to move forward. And now I had no Rex turned on there. So Julian was not stopped. He was allowed to move forward with that false claim. And so you will get an alert. So that's one of the benefits of using Rex. The negative part of using Rex is that he stops them, and they can get frustrated because they want to just move forward as quickly as they can. But the benefit of Rex is that Rex stops them, and Rex says, hey, let's look back. You have to select more than one trial to support your claim. And hey, can we look at the evidence now? Because your claim is not supported by the evidence. So let's go ahead and look at that to rewrite our claim. And then this is where the students are going to go ahead and write their claim evidence and reasoning is in here. And then they'll be done. That's it. And so 15 to 20 minutes, students can go ahead and finish that. So let's go back to what things look like as a teacher. So this is Ink Blotter. Ink Blotter is going to alert you of any of the problems that the students are going to have. If the students just flying through and they're not having any problems, the only way you're going to see that they're even doing anything is if you were clicked into your students tab and you saw some active students there. Because if they don't have issues, you're just not going to see them. And so having Rex on is helpful because it stops the kids and you can reach out to them, or if you were using it synchronously or asynchronously. And then, okay, so let's go back and talk about some things that you might need as a teacher. Let's say that a student says, hey, I completed the first tutorial and I can't seem to see the second tutorial. So one of the things that you can do is you could view the code and you could say, hey, you're already logged in, here's the code. Go ahead and just add that code in your interface, or you can share the link again to them directly, and then they can follow that link directly to the activity, and that will load it straight in. And it actually pops them, rather than into their homepage, it pops them directly into the activity itself. So those are a couple of things you could do. Let's say that I had a kiddo who was completing the first tutorial and they didn't read the goal and they just went through and they created that tautology and they got to the data collection and they went, oh, I guess I should have read the goal. I need to start over. Now you have two choices. You can either say, nope, sorry, like a good scientist follows through with a hypothesis even when they realize that it's wrong. So if a scientist starts to test a drug and realizes that drug is not effective for treating that disease, they finish their trial. They write that up and they publish it, because the world needs to know when scientists discover that their hypothesis was wrong. But maybe you realize that this has nothing to do with being a scientist and has everything to do with the student just needing to learn to read directions, and hopefully they just learned that lesson. What you could go ahead and do is, so this was the basic tutorial for first period. What you could go ahead and do is just go back to Explore Labs and just go ahead and assign that activity again. I wouldn't publish it. I wouldn't put a due date. I would just assign it really quickly. And then what I would do as soon as it's assigned is I would actually go up here to details, and this is something, I wish I hadn't put the word period in there because it just takes up lots of extra space. But I would just do this. I would just put that 2 in there. just so I know and the student knows when I'm looking at my reports later, I can see that too. And I know that that was their second attempt. Or the other option is to assign some things with Rex and some things without. So maybe you have one student who couldn't handle Rex helping them, but your other students could. So you could assign 2 copies of a lab. One is for the majority of the kids, and that has Rex in it, and then one doesn't have Rex in it for the kiddo that just couldn't handle getting that assistance. So let's go ahead and look at reports really quickly. So when you pop into reports, you're on this landing page where you have these helpful documents. You can view individual student reports, and then you can see how many students have completed or enrolled. It turns green when they've completed, and then dark blue is proficient, light blue is working on it, and orange is novice. So this is the part where I tell you you should probably adjust your grading scale if you're pulling our scores straight across, because proficient or doing well to us goes all the way down to 71. So you might want to kind of adjust how you're scoring those. Maybe give them scores like, if you used a 3-point scale, this could be a 3, a 2, and a 1, something along those lines. And so, okay, and then, all right, so let's look at reports really briefly. You could look at your individual student reports if you wanted to, which would give you an overall breakdown if you've done a number of different activities. This is not typical, by the way. This is just me messing around with Julian Garcia, who's my favorite little kiddo name. And because I had a Julian that I really enjoyed in my class, and another kid with the last name of Garcia. So I put them together. And usually you'll see orange, that then goes to light blue, that then goes to dark blue. But obviously I like playing around in the system. And so you're seeing scores kind of all over the place. But this is where you could see that progress. And when you assign 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 activities, you start to see some great progress that you can share with parents or administrators. When you are here, if you wanted to look at a class, it's very helpful to be able to do this download. So you can pull that down as a spreadsheet and look at the responses all really quickly, which I used that method because I had classes of over 30, and being able to look through their claim evidence reasoning, etc. quickly helped. It's also helpful to tell students that their writing will be scored, because often they just assume that they can just write gobbledygook and get through, and you'll never know. So it's helpful to tell them that it's going to be scored and you'll be able to see it later. And then if you wanted to pop in here, you could click into Julian's name, see how he was doing. We just finished advanced tutorial 2. So I could open that up. I could look at his response here and look at how he's doing in all of the skills and what he needs to work on, etc. And another option would be, the way I often did it in my own classroom, was to have students grab a copy of their lab and then have my students go ahead and attach that, either Google Classroom, whatever LMS you're using, and then give them a chance to write up, if they got a low score on something, how they would improve for the future. Help and resources, please, please, please give me some grace. It's just me trying to update all of that stuff. So I'm trying to do it as quickly as I can, but there is some stuff that is outdated because we have been making improvements as quickly as we can, given the current situation. And I'm on the phone a lot helping different people because that's what I do. And then settings, if you needed to change any information for yourself, you would do that here. You could also, maybe you wanted to connect to Google and to Clever, you could do that here. And then you could manage your classroom sections here, add sections, etc. Students tab, super, super important. So remember, we're not rostering students. So we're not asking you to pull in the roster names of all of your students. Instead, what we're doing is we're giving you codes, and you push those codes out to your students. And so in doing that, your students will not show up in your students tab until they follow that through and create their account. So you can see whether they've created an account here. If you have students are having problems getting back in, it's often because they forgot to connect to Google or Clever, whichever is applicable for you. And so this is the point when you can tell them, if they forgot to connect, hey, this is your username, and I can change your password to Bulldogs or whatever, whatever is an appropriate password for your student. And then they can go ahead and get in that way. And as soon as they're in, they just need to click their own settings tab, and then they'll be able to connect their account. All right, I think I've been talking long enough. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or you need anything at all. I have greatly appreciated the opportunity to talk to you today. Doesn't look like I have any questions. I'm checking. Nope. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.